So for week 2 of my Oracle deck challenge, I worked with the Le Vampire Oracle deck by Lucy Cavendish and Jasmine Beckett Griffith. And I'll just show you some images from the cards while I share my experience working with this deck. This is, again, as I said in my review, a very focused deck on shadow work, on healing deep wounds within ourselves, and when we're going through difficult times, in times of transition. This is a very powerful deck to work with, and it worked wonderfully for it to be one of the decks that I got to know better for this month. I really hadn't gotten to sink my teeth into it, for lack of a better word, since I'd gotten the deck, even though I've read the guidebook and done some readings with this deck as a clarifying deck, and I've worked with it a few times on some things with myself, and it's been eerily accurate, just like Oracle of the Shapeshifters is for me. So, and the week that I worked with this, which wasn't this week, but the week prior to this, it was no different. This deck is very accurate. It really called me out on some things that I was stepping into victim mode about and needed to, kind of like deal with it or move on. Reach an understanding of some underlying things that were not energies that I wanted to keep around me or my family at this time. So this deck was really, really helpful for that. And I used it in some client readings too, as well as the daily draws on Facebook. And again, right on with the client readings, right on for the Facebook daily draws for most of you from the responses I got. So it's not only a beautiful deck, but it's a really, really accurate deck. Even though this deck is gorgeous and I love it, I haven't felt as close to it as, say, I did with the Oracle of the Shapeshifters deck. But this week with working with this deck has really been very helpful for me to understand the energy of this deck, which again is very I'm trying to think of the right word, like it's very upfront, it's just very honest, it's very clear about what it is that you need to work on, and it's just very forthright. I guess forthright's the right word. It's a very forthright deck, it's a very upfront deck, and I learned a lot about myself and about this deck working with this guy for a week. So I do feel like the energy in this one's a little bit more masculine than Wild Wisdom of the Fairy, which is feminine energy to me. There are lots of wolves in this deck, which I really appreciate, and some other animals. I always love it when I have an Oracle deck with that included, and so I enjoyed looking at all the different wolves this week, and spiders, and things like that, and ravens and crow. That's been very, very beautiful for me. So I used the guidebook along with it, and you guys know from my review that it's not my all-time favorite guidebook, although I do really enjoy it because it's a Lucy Cavendish guidebook, so there's lots of love and honor for the energies in this deck in that guidebook. But I enjoyed just working with it intuitively this week too. I did read some of the card meanings when I was doing spreads for myself, but I didn't get too stuck in that. It was more about the feeling that I had from the deck as I was working with it. This is my favorite image in the card. And this is my favorite card in the deck at this moment. That's what I was trying to say. Vincent's awake now, sorry. So I'm a little distracted. So I really enjoyed getting to know this deck better. I feel like this is a deck that I'm going to grow closer to as the years go by and as I work more and more with it. I haven't had an immediate intense connection with this deck like I have with some other decks by Lucy Cavendish, like Oracle of the Shapeshifters, Oracle of the Mermaids, but it's a deck that I really, really enjoy right now, and that I do have a great affinity for. So I'm looking forward to spending even more time with it in the future, and I actually would like to give this deck some more exclusive time, so I think I'm going to do another week with this deck in the near future, just working with it, getting to know it better, and not getting distracted by other decks. I've had a beautiful but an interesting experience with this deck. And as we shift and change and grow ourselves, we're often in an uncomfortable space. And I think this deck just really mirrors that for us. Like, what is creating the discomfort? How do we heal? How do we shift? How do we acknowledge and understand ourselves and the discomfort that we're experiencing, the pain that we're experiencing? And this deck really doesn't let you run away from that. Vincent's playing with a piano. So I had a great week with this deck. I do feel like I understand it better and that our relationship is growing, and I'm really happy for that. I'm really excited about that. So for the third week, I did the Wisdom of the Golden Path Oracle deck, and I'm just finishing that week now, so we'll see what deck I use for the fourth week. But share with me what you all have been using for your deck challenges if you're joining in, and many blessings to you all. I'll see you in the next video.